Putin grabbed the phone and called the Soviet military garrison in Dresden. "We need immediate protection," he said. "Our building may be stormed any minute." In the city of Dresden, a Soviet KGB officer named Vladimir Putin, 37 years old, sat behind a worn wooden desk inside a quiet villa at Angelika Strasse 4, the local KGB liaison office, working hand in hand with the Stasi, East Germany's secret police. On that cold December night, he wasn't reading files or interrogating defectors. He was waiting, listening to the sound of a crowd growing louder outside. Putin had been stationed in East Germany for nearly 5 years. He spoke fluent German, drove a battered Lada with diplomatic plates, and lived a quiet, disciplined life with his wife Ludmila and their 2 daughters. But tonight, quiet was gone. Hundreds of protesters had gathered outside the Stasi headquarters, furious after discovering how much the secret police had spied on them. The mob began turning toward the nearby Soviet villa, Putin's KGB office. Inside, he and a handful of Soviet officers watched as the angry mob filled the street. The Stasi guards had fled. Local police were nowhere to be found. Someone shouted from outside in German, "Bring out the Russians, burn the files." Through the windows, the men could see shadows moving closer, holding bottles, sticks, and homemade banners. Putin's interpreter, pale and nervous, turned to him and asked, "Comrade Lieutenant Colonel, what do we do?" Putin grabbed the phone and called the Soviet military garrison in Dresden. "We need immediate protection," he said. "Our building may be stormed any minute." There was silence on the line, then a chilling response. "We cannot do anything without orders from Moscow." Putin pressed. "And Moscow?" "Moscow is silent." The words hit like ice. The USSR, his motherland, his command, had gone quiet. He looked around the room. His men were ready to burn documents, orders, agent lists, intelligence files. They began throwing papers into a metal bin, feeding the fire. Smoke filled the small office as Putin stared out at the growing mob, who were now banging on the iron gates. Then came the moment that changed the night. Putin straightened his uniform, walked to the front door, and stepped outside alone. The cold air bit his face. The crowd fell slightly silent, surprised to see a single Soviet officer standing before them. He spoke in fluent German, calm but firm. "This is a Soviet property. You are on foreign soil. My soldiers are armed, and I have ordered them to open fire if anyone enters." He was bluffing. There were no soldiers behind him, only a few unarmed officers and a pile of burning papers. But his voice, steady and controlled, carried authority. The mob hesitated. A few men exchanged looks. Then someone shouted, "He's lying. There are no troops." But no one dared to move first. For several tense minutes, the standoff continued. Finally, the crowd began to disperse, first in dozens, then in hundreds. By midnight, only the crackle of the burning files remained. Putin went back inside, exhausted, covered in soot. The next morning, Dresden was eerily quiet. The Stasi headquarters had been looted, its archives scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. But the Soviet villa still stood untouched. For the next few days, Putin and his colleagues destroyed everything. Every report, every file, every name. When the order finally came from Moscow to evacuate, there was almost nothing left to recover. He later recalled that night as a turning point, the moment he realized how fragile power could be when the system above you collapses. The country was sick, he would say years later. It had lost its strength, and no one seemed in control. When Putin returned to Russia in 1990, the Soviet Union itself was on its knees. The once mighty empire he had served in silence for over a decade was falling apart, just as he had seen in Dresden. But the lesson stayed with him. When power retreats, chaos takes its place. When there are no clear orders, someone must act decisively. That night in Dresden wasn't about heroics or firepower. It was about presence, authority, and control in a vacuum of leadership. Years later, when he rose to power as Russia's president, that same mindset would define him. His obsession with stability, his mistrust of disorder, his readiness to act where others hesitated. Please choose a video on your screen and keep the investigation going as we uncover the next untold story together. To join us in this crime investigations, please subscribe, turn on the bell, and hit that like button. Every mystery leads deeper